Hello.
Wait, can I put this on my Instagram?
Absolutely.
Sick.
You can send a video on your Instagram and people can watch
I'll
live.
go live from my Instagram.
And perfect.
While we go live on the
You have two options to watch Sean live. I also don't like how close I am to chat. Okay, the goats. While everyone logs in, questions for you guys to answer while you log in is Chase.
Yeah.
Were you going for Super Mario with the mustache?
No, Luigi. Okay,
Waluigi.
Mario, short, fat. He doesn't work out that much. Luigi, underrated, tall, skinnier.
But to be fair, Luigi got the girl. Mario got the girl.
Yeah, okay, no, but there's Peach, and then there's Daisy. Which one goes to who?
Daisy gets Luigi.
Yeah,
It wasn't. I knew there was different. If you had asked me, are Daisy and Peach both characters? I would have said yes, like Mario Kart and stuff. But I don't think I was like consciously aware that those were.
Yeah,
like,
Mario Kart. You get to
princesses in the
choose.
game.
And there's the one that has a little bit more like a amber color.
But Peach always gets the. She always gets the.
No, but she always gets taken by Bowser. So
Which is
do
the
I
blonde
really
one?
want Peach?
That's Peach.
Peach is blonde. I thought Daisy was blonde.
No, brunette. It's like
reddish.
strawberry blonde.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what we wanted to know.
Yeah, I think that's pretty messed up. Let's put the blonde girl as the main person. Like, why don't we get some love to look at this? I got some strawberry blonde going on in here.
Yeah. Speaking of a goat.
Looks good.
Yeah. Hey, also, I encourage you guys. I haven't touched my face in a month and a half, so
Like physically or with a razor?
coronavirus. Like, I don't even want to be in this area at all. Hey, so as people get hopping on, we're just gonna jump right into it, and this one's fun because what all of these guys have in common is that we're all married with one kid. So that's super exciting.
Oh no.
We're not all married together.
We're all married.
That's not.
Chase
It's
and I
not
live
Tiger
together.
King action right happening.
They do live in the same house.
Yeah,
And Tyler live in a house that I used to live in. But
Jason and I used to live in the same room.
that's true.
what happened? Fight?
Yeah.
Break out.
I understand.
I don't want to talk about it, but
Okay.
we can talk about it later.
No,
I
I get
don't
it.
want to talk about it.
No, but what all of us have in common is we all work in men's ministry, and specifically high school men's ministry. So the cool thing is, I think, like at one point in time, the four of us were regularly working pretty close together, whether it was like Chase, Tyler, and I were all together on the same men's staff, but we would also work pretty closely with Sean. And so just in various departments, we've gotten to work together on together with things on men's ministry. And so I thought it'd be fun to talk a little about just that idea of like men's ministry, our heart for men's ministry, our heart for just dudes in general and guy life groups and all that stuff. Because it's not just like, sometimes you go, oh, we've heard you talk about it, but it's cool when we all are passionate about the same thing. Like for our careers and our work, we do a lot of the same stuff. And I get like, you go, Sean works with coffee and Chase works with ice creams, but it's like, but that's not what they're passionate about. I mean, like
Ask for anything else.
Sean does love coffee, but he's like passionate about helping 11th, 12th grade guys know Jesus. Depending on how annoying, not 10th grade.
Yeah, I don't.
If you're 11th, 12th grade, he actually doesn't care
Once
if you
you
know
graduate
Jesus at
10th
all.
grade,
Yeah.
Sean does not care about you.
It's like, hey, remember that student you used to have? He's following the
I
church.
actually don't.
You're like, so?
Yeah.
And he
2
said,
weeks back past like that 10th grade, moving on.
Now my
Sean
monkey, not my
doesn't
circus.
care.
Also, depending on how bad of a day it is, Sean might actually be more passionate about coffee than you students. So just be on his good side,
Yeah.
Whoever pays the most.
Yeah.
This is what
But
happens when you're between 11 and 12 people.
what
You get targeted.
we just turned this into like one of those
Yeah,
shows, like
comment
Jerry
Surprise,
Springer.
it's actually a
Jerry
roast.
Yeah.
Springer, you bring someone on. This is the
Comment your
roast of
favorite
9, 10
roast
Sean.
of Sean. The
Uh,
students who had Sean.
Yeah,
Just
they'll
comment
do it.
away.
Mandy's probably already come up with 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got a couple questions for them, just about men's ministry as a whole. And if you guys are sitting here listening, I encourage you to get out a pen and a paper, something to take notes, because these are guys that have poured into you. They have been a part of your lives. They've cared about you. And so I just think some of these questions are going to be pretty good for you to hear, like, hey, why did you get into ministry? Why did you do all these things? Why do you have a heart for men's ministry? So excited for you guys to hear this and hope that your life groups go well tonight. But before we get into life groups, the first one's for Sean. And give us like a 30-second to a minute on how you came to know Jesus.
LaCrae.
Look,
Just actually,
I love that
that's
drink.
not really a joke. Yeah, I was steeped. I grew up in a really like agnostic home, so just no church talk. None of us really talked about God. None of us really cared. And yet, in the mix of all of that, there was just kind of sitting with existential thought a lot, and just going like, what happens when I die? And not really like my conclusion to that was that I just like everything was over. Like you just were gone and done and you couldn't think about it. And that really scared me. So I was asking a lot of questions like that. And then also just living in the world and of the world was like dealing with a lot of sin, but having no context for what sin is was like I would do things and feel shame and not know why. And how come there's a certain set of things that I do that make me feel weird and different and bad? That really just through a lot of question asking led me to go like, wow, the Christian gospel makes the most sense to like the unanswered areas of my life. And yeah, just kind of fell in love with the grace and freedom of Jesus, and here we are.
for sure.
Yeah.
You're an only child, right?
I am.
Okay, so we had Ben Sherlock here last week, who has 12 siblings. So
The
he's got enough.
opposite.
He's got enough for both of you guys. Don't worry.
Yeah.
I'll
Take it.
But who, like, I think a lot of times something that's helpful in having siblings, and you're an only child, there's nothing wrong with being an only child, but there is that where sometimes you can like bounce dialogue off, your parents, but you have like other siblings who you can wrestle through things with, and they can point you even in the right direction. Like I remember my brother was like, hey, I think you should start, I was kind of a butt in junior high, and my brother was like, hey, I think you should, like start actually attending church and like get involved in their leadership team. And I was like, what do you know? And then I did, and it changed my life. I was like, okay, I have him to thank for that. But who did you go to for questions and advice and stuff?
Yeah, totally. I had a friend. Funny that her name was Courtney, and she kind of like she was the one that sent me the link to the LaCrae song that got those questions going. But really, honestly, like that was such a small part. But the most questions answered came from two of my like best friends that I grew up with my whole life. They were Christians their whole life, and my next door neighbors, and yeah, I just started throwing the questions their way. I was given a Bible and started reading that without going to church, and that was really confusing. So just asked them a ton of questions, and through that, they started inviting me to church. And yeah.
For sure. Before I ask the next question, I'm just looking at myself on the screen, and I'm like, man, I didn't have to go outside until this, so it's acceptable. But how did all that, the two people that you had to talk to, just kind of your experience, how did that lead you into wanting to do high school ministry?
Yeah. So I did all of high school except my senior year without Jesus, and that sucked. Like I hated it. So then there was like such a dramatic difference between who I was junior year to who I was senior year, just by the like unlocking of freedom and life that Jesus can offer. And yeah, one of my whole senior year, I just wish that I'd been able to know Jesus my freshman year and like walk through high school with Jesus. And I think my heart broke for freshman Sean, and just like how hard of a high school experience I walked through. Not like anything dramatic or crazy. It was just I carried shame all through high school, and it sucked. And yet to go through senior year and just be free from that, I just had such a heart to know that could change for other high schoolers. So that's really kind of what sparked the interest for me, was to see high schoolers like experience that.
For sure.
Yeah.
Also, just a shout out from, or more a word of encouragement is, when Sean first came to North Coast, I think I was a freshman in college. I can't remember. I think you're a year older.
You were
than
a
me.
senior.
Really?
Yeah.
Because you were a freshman in college?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I was a senior, but I had like seen him around and interacted a little bit because he was a grade above me. And I remember like my brother was pretty good friends with Sean, like right off the bat. And I just, in my head, I'm like,
I will never escape this story.
Actually, oh no, I wasn't even about to tell that. That's funny. I'll tell that in a second. But
escape the story.
This is actually true of both Chase and Sean. But I think there's this like thing that happens in my heart whenever someone new comes, where I'm like, they probably are pretty cool and can be pretty cool, but like you're a little bit of a loyalist, and you're like, this is our ground, this is our turf, you know, like I'm North Coast born and raised, so like, you almost have to like, you feel out the waters. Like, are you cool? You're gonna be chill. You're not gonna like come for a week and then badmouth our church and all that stuff. So, shamedly so, I'd admit that I was a little bit reserved towards like Sean at first. and not out of anything that Sean did, just out of me being a loyalist, but that's an encouragement for all you who are longtime North Coasters. If you ever see anyone new come in, they could be a Sean, like where they could end up working for, he's the longest tenured 910 staff member.
Yeah.
And he's just made such a deep impact on some of your lives. And like now Sean and I are pretty good friends, but what if we could have been better friends because I wasted the first 2 years being skeptical of him. So
we'll catch up.
Also, if you guys see a green Honda Civic driving around, there's an Amber Alert. So please,
let's get him.
Let's find that.
Or her.
Leave the live. We're gonna go find a green Honda Civic.
We're serving our community.
Yeah, it should be.
Oh yeah, I got two.
There it is.
With COVID, it should be easy to find. No one's on the freeway, so let's just all go out and look for the green Honda Civic.
That's opposite of what they want.
That's what Chase drives.
Oh no.
Stop.
I knew I've seen you somewhere. Yeah, so I just think that's such a cool testament of like where Sean came from, but even his heart of like, I had my life changed. Now I want to change others' lives. Now let's go over to Chase. Chase, why did you go to school? You got your master's degree.
Yep.
Why did you go to school to study theology?
I think for first, it was a practical reason. I knew that I wanted to go into ministry as my job, vocationally. And I thought, okay, not necessary, but I want to learn more of who God is. And as I was in one of my classes, there's Theology 1 taught by Professor Thomas, there was 2 doors that were going to the outside world. That's how classrooms work. And students would be walking past it. It was a walkway. And I remember occasionally, as a student would walk by, some of the students would get distracted and would start looking at that student, but there would be a blip. They would just walk by the door and they'd keep on going. And our professor was a very passionate man. And he stopped the class and says, guys, I don't know why you're distracted. He says, we're learning more of who God is. We're studying God. What's more important than that? And it was in that moment I realized, like, this isn't just something so I can get better at my job. This is something so I can learn the most important thing about life. One of my theologians, A.W. Tozer, says this. It says, what comes into the mind of a man when he thinks about God is the most important thing about him. And if that is true, which I believe it is, then me studying theology just means the study of God, is the most important thing that I can do. And that doesn't have to be in a university setting. If you guys are learning from your guys' leaders, studying who God is, that is also equally as important. But for me, at first it was practical, like this is what I want to do. And then it turned into more of like, this is actually at the core of who I should be. This is stuff that I should be learning. So at first practical, but then it was a lot deeper than that.
For sure. 2 things I noticed while you were talking is the first is that almost like all theologians have initials, like G.K. Chesterton, A.W. Tozer, C.S. Lewis. So if I want to be a serious theologian, I think I have to start going by C.J. Prazak or C.D. Webster.
C.D. Webster.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that, but they're all like, let's just abbreviate our names and then we can be theologians.
Yeah, it was true. It's actually in the first day.
But so the second thing is you didn't have your major picked. You kind of just went to college and you're like, let's figure this thing out. And then you were so enthralled with theology that you're like, I want to take this next step and make this my major.
Yeah. That's not true, but we can pretend it's true.
Oh.
That's the other Chase Webster. But no, what happened was this. I went into school wanting to do Christian ministry because that's my personality it was more of a hands-on major. It was learning about small groups, learning about how to construct a church, learning about leadership skills. I'm like, you know what? I like being hands-on. But I talked to one of my buddies who went to that school and says, you know what, Christian ministry, great major. But when it comes to studying the Bible, when it comes to studying God, Bible is top ranked. And I kind of was realizing, you know what? God is giving me gifts where I can interact with people well. I want to start learning in an area where I'm not as gifted in and strengthen that area so that I can be a helpful resource in that. I'm not too much of a deep thinker. I just think about pizza all the time. Like that's really just like where my brain is at. And so schooling really helps me kind of go to, hey, what does it look like to not just think a thought for 15 seconds? What does it look like to actually dwell on something and to meditate on something and to think about things that are far beyond what my brain can handle. Like, I remember when I was really young, I probably was 16. No, I was probably 8. I was petrified at the thought of eternity, like time going on and on and on. I still don't like to think about it for long periods of time now, but I remember I was so scared of it that I was crying. I went to my mom, and she was like in her closet. She was like changing, and I was like at the door, and I just sat down at the door and weeping. And that was kind of the first occasion for me to go into a deeper thought. And I was like, had reservations, but I think as I went to school, I realized like there is important things for us to think along the hot. And I feel like, all right, what do I want to talk about? Okay, cool. What kind of sauce? Hot sauce. And like that's all I think. Like, what does it look like to actually think about more important stuff?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, it's important though. I just want to say that.
For all of you guys, kind of maybe just a little bit, like without diving too deep into it, why men's ministry? You know, like I get with ministry, like you are a guy, and so when you're be placed in a ministry, they're gonna go, hey, focus on our guys. But like more than that, you know, like I maybe for some of you it was just like this was just happenstance. Like I just wanted to get in ministry, and I was like, important that we pastor the girls, but we don't wake up thinking about how we can help the girl students grow, develop, and know Jesus. But we wake up thinking about how we can make you guys know Jesus better, how we can grow you from coming in as like freshman boys to lead as senior men to go out and like change the world and steward family and wives. And so for all of you guys, maybe let's start Tyler, since they both just talk about like why men's ministry.
Yeah, I think for me it was really personally convicting when I came into 11-12. I think there was like 8 guys that would consistently come in a ministry of like 300 people. There were more, but not anybody that the staff would know their name or you would consider involved like in life groups weekly. So I think for me, as someone who was really involved in and came to the ministry often and stuff like that, I kind of had to realize that that was part of my responsibility. It wasn't something that was Chandler's job. It wasn't something that was Chris's job. As a dude in the ministry, it was my job to make up the men's ministry. So I think from there, it kind of sparked into like, I just want more guys here. And just learning about what manhood is and how men lead the church in specific, it just ignited this fire in me. I just want more dudes here. So the more dudes are like, so that it's not a girl place. The church is not a girl place. And I hate it when it becomes that. So I think I started in high school and then getting to leave high school and watch it grow and grow and grow and then get to lead guys in the ministry now. And yeah, I think it just started for me like, this isn't a girl place. I don't want it to be a girl place. I want guys to find Jesus here and love it here. So I think that is where it sparked for me.
For sure.
Yeah, I like, to be honest, didn't want to do it. I feel like I had such a negative experience with men's ministry. And
how so? Like a little glimpse of what your experience was.
Yeah, like I feel like walking into the church was like, all right, there's like high school ministry, and then there's this like hyper masculine area where it's like we're gonna throw axes, and like if you don't ride a motorcycle, you're not a man. And yeah, like I thought that's what I was gonna have to do. And I think what was really like it switched for me was meeting people like Christopher and Austin and even like Chase and Shannon, like some of these other guys who like displayed manhood, but not in like a hyper masculine way. And that's not to say that they're not like manly. Like Chase has bigger biceps than the planet. So like, yeah,
the planet has biceps.
Totally. Like
No, they don't. That's why I have bigger ones.
Definitely. But yeah, I saw men truly live out a walk with Jesus, and that was cool. Like being a cool dad and loving your kid and reading your Bible, and like a Jonathan Blessey who gets up at 5:30 every morning to read, and like, yeah, like those guys who weren't defined by their manhood according to like their ability to do like worldly things in the church, but by like actually just following Jesus. And yeah, seeing those guys and recognizing how rare those people were, I think inspired me to go like, what if we could create more of them, starting with the people below us by being one of those pillars, and 2, like raising up more of them so that people in 6th grade can have someone to look up to when they get to high school.
For sure. And I think that's actually, I love something you said, Sean, which is just like the generation we're in is different now. You know, like what a man is, even in the secular meaning of what a man per se is, like still there's still some of those things that are attached to it. Like, oh, a man's a football player or a guy who can like support himself financially or has sex. And we don't really believe that as the church, but this idea of like masculinity a number of years ago was like, do you, like, are you a general contractor or a plumber of some sort?
Yeah.
Like, do you like burping, and do you like eating bacon, and do you like, but now we're in a society where it's like, we like going to coffee shops, and, like we like aesthetics, and we like dressing nice. And so it's like, but both can be true. You can find yourself on either of the aisle. And so I think what we want to say is, if you are a certain type of person, don't think that makes you any less a man.
Yeah.
Manhood does not have to do with personality. Manhood has to do with like accepting responsibility and living out those responsibilities and like obedience to Christ. And so I think that's something that's important, that's touched on. If you've ever in any way felt like a men's ministry has been like, you have to like want to grunt after every time you have like a pancake or whatever, that I don't know my example, but so manhood takes all different kinds of shapes and forms as far as personality, but there are plenty of men who look very different. And so, manhood's not necessarily about what your common interests are. It's about more than that.
Yeah, I think just echoing what Sean was saying, I was thinking the same thing of seeing what other men in my life who truly follow Jesus, who adhere to the Word of God, who live in a life of where they have also other brothers who are keeping them accountable. I've seen the potential of seeing that in you, Chandler, seeing that in you, seeing that in you, seeing that in other guys, like even watching Chris Brown or Chris Hogan or Austin Payne. Like, these are people who display what does it look like to be a man of God. And I know that is not just because you guys all the cream of the crop, that there's no other way that anyone else could be like you guys. No, that's in all of us. We're all called to be men of God. And I see that potential because I see the results. I see the results of you guys. I see the results of so many guys who have graduated in your class and going, this can happen. And so that's what gets me excited, seeing the untapped potential. I don't know if they're listening to like what the world has to say, or they're just not taking serious of what God is saying about them, but I see the potential. And that's why I'm so passionate about men's ministry, is that what God can do in their lives.
For sure. Something that I think is probably pretty true about guys is we generally open up slower than I think the average girl does. And now that's not generally true across the board, that's not always true across the board, but I think there is a generalization about that, which can be like, that idea of blood brothers, where it's like, I've shared stories with you, I have history, like we have known each other since we were little kids, like we've gotten hurt riding bikes, stuff like that, where you just go, we have history and we bonded through experience and all this stuff. Whereas girls, like even on any given weekend service, it seems like one girl can hop to like 35 different groups and talk to them. Whereas like I've noticed that generally guys will stick with their little pod, and maybe that pod will grow with like some people as they get there, but you generally like you stick with your group. And so why is it so important that guys have community? And especially because I think we're a little bit slower to hop into community naturally than girls are, just with like our appeal of life groups, and especially in this time of Zoom, where we like bonding over common interests, not necessarily just like talking. I think Zoom or FaceTime is pretty hard for us, but why is it so important to have men's community, maybe even with an emphasis in the midst of coronavirus?
Yeah, that's huge. I think you can find community anywhere, right? Like, we live in a generation where you guys are connected more than ever to people all around the world, and yet like the statistic is still true that you guys are the loneliest generation that's ever existed. So there's like a weird scale there where it's like there's this facade of community, and yet there's like what the church is offering, and that like statistic of loneliness is a lot smaller within the Christian circle. But I think within like specifically guy community, it's just I think like if it's driven by the love of Jesus, like it is undeniably the safest place for you to be broken and who you actually are. And that's literally according to anything. Like, bring your most broken thing. If the church and the group that you find yourself in is driven by the love of Jesus, it's the safest place for you to be that person. But it's also the greatest and most encouraging place to like grow and become like Jesus, and to learn how to repent, and to like be supported and encouraged in your brokenness. And I think like outside of a guy community, like there's just barriers. Like that's just the reality. You can't be as vulnerable with a girl as you can with a guy. or you can, and it's kind of weird, and it's not really helpful. Like any advice they have to offer, they just don't know. Like, no girl that you think you can be vulnerable with knows how to be a high school guy. Like it's just not a thing. And yeah, the church is going to offer you a guy community of people your age who are dealing with the same thing, and a leader who's gone through it and goes, hey, let me help you get through this better than I did.
And I think even to that point, there is the notion of like, if you don't get married to that girl that you're confiding in, like that relationship's going to end in some form or another. If you get married someday, like it's going to disappear. Whereas, you know, like I've been friends with Josh Cezanne, EJ, all these guys since like middle school, since the beginning of high school. Like some of these people that Charlie Powers, like we were in this, EJ, Charlie, and I were all in the same middle school life group, and then Josh joined when we were like freshmen or sophomores. I can't remember, but still, it was like, yeah, we've been together forever, and when I got married, I didn't have to say like bye to that relationship. So.
Yeah, I legitimately talked to no girl that I talked to in high school. But the two people I still talk to from high school, the two guys that brought me to church. Like that's just cold hard facts for you guys right there. So
one of my buddies told me a saying that, and for the most part, this is true. If you have a problem, you go to a guy, you're looking for a solution. If you have a problem, you go to a girl, you're looking for attention. Now, there's some certain situations where like, well, my mom's a girl or my sister's. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what does it look like to actually go to guys who can understand you. The reason why we need men's community is because guys get guys. There's some things that just, imagine you guys don't understand the thoughts that are going through a girl's brain. So let's flip it around. Do you think girls understand what's going through a guy's brain? I don't think so. I think the common saying is like, oh, guys just don't get girls. Well, girls don't get guys. So the emphasis is wanting to actually truly be known. In a community where you can be known, and what Sean was saying, where you can be loved. Because if the famous quote by Timothy Keller is saying like, yeah, if you are known and loved, that's a lot like being loved by God. But if you are loved but not really known, like if you're loved by a lot of girls but they don't really know what's going on in your life, it's superficial. So like, what does it look like to get that genuine love from God? And I think for guys, we need it in a guys group because they get us, they know us. And so that's so important of, can I be known? And men can know men.
And that's so facts. And I think guys, like, you know, a guy loves you more so than a girl loves you because there's no sort of like attention that you want from them. Like when a guy actually cares to sit down and have an honest conversation with you, it's just because he loves you.
There's no hidden agenda.
There's no hidden agenda. There's no, oh, I like you. I think you're cute. I think you're funny. Like having a true friend in a guy is so different than having a true friend from a girl, because a guy has no other reason to sit there and talk to you other than I care about you. I care about your spiritual growth. I care about you as a person and who you truly are.
Yeah. So
I think where I've found that is, yeah, it's harder to be friends with guys. Guys don't think you're cute and funny. It's not as easy to
laugh at all your jokes.
No, it's
because that was dumb.
it's harder to build off that.
Yeah.
But that's how you know that something is real and raw and true and organic, is because there is no agenda behind that.
Yeah, and something I do want to make clear is this isn't us telling you guys to like never talk to a girl again. You know, like don't hear that in our speaking. It's more like it's very important for you to understand how to have healthy friendships with girls in the midst of a Christian community. But we're saying like the people that you are going to do life with, that are going to know your ins and outs, like that are going to help push you to Jesus and help you know him better. The people that are going to challenge and convict, you want those people to be men because they understand what it means to be a man, and they're walking through some of those similar things. And you can open up about, you know, like if you have any sexual temptations or things like that, which just aren't appropriate to share with a girl in any form or fashion. And so, yeah, that's what we mean. So don't hear this as like, you know, you don't have to all like rally together and be like, yeah, let's never talk to girls again. Like, and you're like, we got COVID for that, you know, but like, don't, we encourage you, like when we're all back together, feel free to talk and interact with girls, but do life with other guys, you know, like have them be the ones that you share and open up with and have them challenge and convict you. I think something else that's kind of true about this, which kind of touches in the same topic, but I think one of the reasons that, yeah, I know for me specifically, it was just so much easier to be friends with girls. And I get some of that's like the sexual tension that's constantly near in high school and like them laughing at you and stuff. But I do think there's a truth to that. Girls are, in general, better conversationalists.
Yep.
And they will probably, like, on a surface level, I feel like a girl is easier to connect with than on a guy just initially. So what would be your advice for someone who's saying, like, man, I desperately want good Christian dude relationships. How do I learn to be a good guy friend? Like, how can I start those experiences? How can I pursue that friendship without being like creepy or having them think that I'm like into them or something? You know, like without being weird, but it's like you go, okay, I believe you, but what I need is guy friendships. How do I pursue that if that's something that is hard for me?
Yeah, I think that was real weird for me showing up to the church. Was like, wait, like I got to talk to guys and be like close with them, and right, like the world is like really fine-tuned me to just be like butt slaps and attaboys after doing good in sports, and it's like that was the extent of guy relationship. And I think the enemy has done a really good job of like, coining it to be weird to have those kind of conversations and to make us feel weird. And yet, like you look at the biblical examples of friendship between guys, and it's like, whoa, that's real deep. Like you look at David and Jonathan, and they like give each other brotherly kisses. And I'm not like, don't run with that, man. And
or Trevor,
or any of the guys that used to be in my group. And like, but there's an extent of like, man, they loved each other. And when David was in a really difficult moment, Jonathan wept. And like I think the devil has done a really good job. The enemy has done a really good job of covering it up and going like, don't have that because of the fruit that it could have. And the more that you can like counter that and believe that a close, intimate guy friendship is weird, I think there's a freedom that you have to do it. Like, I love where I'm at right now with like my roommates, where like all of us are guys, and at any given day, like the living room can become a place for us to talk, or a room can become a place for us to like pour our hearts out or seek accountability. And like when crap has hit the fan with my family, like the roommates have been there to pray for me. And like I think you really just have to try, like when God says I've ordained this to be good, when guy and guy friendships are supposed to be deep and intimate, that like we can trust that's true and that's good. But
I didn't do well in physics, but I learned one thing, is that the initial force to move something is greater than the force you need to keep something going. And it kind of applies to the situation of the initial conversation of like, hey, bro, how you doing? Might be awkward. It might be uncomfortable. But once you start that, man, that ball will start rolling.
Inertia, baby.
Inertia. Yeah, see, I learned physics.
It's relational inertia.
But it might be initially uncomfortable and so hard because I agree. I think the devil has made this thing of like, guys don't get deep with each other. They don't talk about these things. Like, it's almost just more of like, kind of surface level things. But if you're willing to, if it's something that you want initially, it's going to be difficult, but it becomes so much easier where I'm able to have so many more conversations with my guy friends because I had that hard one in the beginning. And it might seem hard, but it gets easier, just as physics, initial force versus the continual force.
Yeah. I think that's why the church is such a beautiful place too, because we do have these groups that we sit around with each other week by week. And I think as guys, it's hard to not just see that as another time to hang out with all your buddies. But what if we took life groups as a time where we really said like, okay, we all know why we're here. Like we're all dedicated to Jesus and to growing with him. Like, don't be weird about it. Don't make it awkward, but just like make a group dedication that we want to grow together, that we want to live in glass houses, that we want to know what's really going on with one another. And I think sometimes there's this expectation that like your leader is going to somehow subconsciously lead you there and you're all going to end up doing it, but it's not. It's really just comes down to you walking in every week and going, we're all dedicated to growing together. We're all dedicated to being real with each other and being more than just what Sean said, like butt slapping, attaboy type of guys. Like we want real community, and we're going to take this time every week to not wait for our leader to ask us to do it or not wait for someone else, but we're just all going to like dive in and as a group dedicate to that. I think it's so cool.
And it legitimately only takes one of you to change the course of that. Like freshman year, Manny pulled me aside after group and was like, hey, like, I just want group to be like more deep. And I just told him like, then do it. Like, show up next week and pour your heart out. And to like my surprise, he showed up next week and he poured his heart out. And then the rest of that group, like every other guy poured his heart out. And that like changed the course of our life here for the next 2 years. And yeah, like now I watch those guys, 3 years later, and they're still as close as they could be because one person just said like, I'm going to dive in, and found out that everyone else wanted to dive in. So like the reality is true that like all of us desire it. And if we were to just jump and trust that God is like called it to be good, then we would watch the fruit of it happen really, really fast. So
yeah. Okay, so we got 5 minutes left, so we have time for like 2 more quick questions. The first is, what's something that makes you guys feel valued as a pastor or youth leader?
Yeah.
Especially from guy students, maybe.
I'll take that. I think when I feel valued is when I see a student actually apply what I am saying, what the Word of God is saying, and I see them changing things in their life that aren't easy when they start to maybe break off relationships that are unhealthy, or they start to not look at things they're not supposed to look at, or they start to do things of treating their parents with respect or taking care of the thing that's given them, and they start applying it. Because I remember sometimes I would come home and I would talk to Sean, and he says, "Hey, how was youth for you?" And I said, "I feel like I was killing them." Because I saw these glazed over looks, and they didn't really say much afterwards. And I went, "Am I doing anything?" And it was really valuable when this just happened a few weeks ago, and I've actually still yet to respond to that email. My bad. But a student reached out to me and says, "Hey, I remember you shared your testimony, and it was like 6 years ago. But what happens in your life similarly happened in my life, and what you said about what God did in that moment really helped me get through it." So not only is it seeing them change and seeing them actually apply it, but also, I mean, I actually enjoy it when a student will say, "Hey, thanks so much for what you're doing. I know you don't need a bunch of 16, 17, 18-year-old guy friends. That's not what you need. You're here because you really care." And I appreciate that. And North Coast is very good about that. I actually experienced that a lot when I was at North Coast, of like students coming up saying, "Hey, thanks for that message." But just the intentionality of a student going, "Hey, I appreciate that you're doing this when you don't need to."
yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like trusting us creates such a sense of value, and keep in mind, like I don't think anyone on like the North Coast side of staff is like in ministry to get value. A lot of us are operating from that victory, but like there is something special when a student like trusts you in the place that you feel called to. And like none of us are here to drive you in the wrong direction or to derail you. And yet I think sometimes when we're not trusted or there's like backlash from like advice that we're trying to give you, it feels a little bit like on this side of it, it's like, God, am I doing like what I'm supposed to be doing? Am I in the right place? Like, am I being used in my calling? And I think some of the times that I've like felt the most valued is when a student goes like, all right, like I trust you, and like I'm willing to lean into this, and there's an edification that happens there, like between us and God, but all like through your trust in us. I think that's a really special like role that you guys get to play in honoring like Chandler and Tyler and Chase, and yeah, just even Christopher and anyone else on staff, is when you can just trust them. Like there's such a joy we get to watch and God moving through you, and like we get to play a cool little middleman role in that.
That's so true. I think too, we talk so much about accepting responsibility. Something that really like fills me up is that you don't just always look to me as the leader to like create change, but when you accept responsibility as another leader in my group or in our ministry and like go out and do stuff for yourself or make change for yourself, I think that really fills me up and just shows me like, oh, you care more than to just participate. You actually want to like make this happen as well.
Yeah.
I think that's like the beautiful thing about the church is when we start like realizing that we are what makes it up and we're not just attendees of it. So I think what just really fills me up is like, oh, the guys in my group want to make group what it is. They're not just looking at me to come every week and do it for them.
Yeah. I think something for me that makes me feel really valued is just when like people are really intentional. And that's always been like specifically for youth leaders or pastors, when someone is like, hey, I don't know, when someone goes out of their way to be like, hey, do you want to hang out or do this thing? Because sometimes like you in ministry, like you get older and you just go, yeah, I've got a wife and kids, and like no one wants to hang out with me or do these things. But when you guys, or even like a different life, or you're older, and so it's like they don't want to be around. But even when you guys are like, hey, even if we say no, being invited, or just intentionality, like I think even one of the reasons Tyler was always my favorite student and now like a good friend is just because he was really intentional. Where he'd always be like, hey, I got you this thing because I was either like on my way here, I passed by Starbucks, or was thinking about you or something. And so that stuff, like, using that with like words just really resonates with me when someone's like intentional with recognizing something that I've done and then you affirming that, or being like, yeah, I know you like this, so I got you this. Yeah, it's all stuff that just goes like, you care about us as pastors, like as people. You're not just like, oh, cool, thanks for the spiritual wisdom. Let me walk out the back door and not talk to you ever again after 2 years. But you're just like, no, I like being around you. I like doing a relationship with you. So
yeah, and like you guys are a big part of our lives. I feel like sometimes as a student, I remember being like, oh, I'm like their job. They clock in, they hang out with me and think about me, and then they clock out and maybe pray for me throughout the week. But really, like, we love you guys, and we are very invested into like our students. And like, I know that I love each and every one of my guys beyond their problems or what they talk about at group, but just as people. Like, I just like you guys. And yeah, when you show that same and care about our lives and ask us questions about, what's going on with us, it's not transactional for us. It's very much so relationship and give and take. So yeah, I think that's so true.
Josh already said Chan chooses favorites. Absolutely. That's right. It says in the Bible, do not show favoritism, but here I am.
Well,
it's okay, I'll repent.
I'll stay away from that lecture.
We actually don't have time for question number 2, so you'll just forever be wondering what it was. Just make up whatever you wanted the question to be, and then pretend what our answers were.
Put it in the comment. Later.
But yeah, something that I think I've noticed with just talking to all these guys and getting to hang out with them is our heart is that you guys learn. I was actually talking with my mentor about this, but I think my heart for men's ministry is that all men would learn initiative and intentionality. Because like our first sin was rejecting responsibility and being passive. And so accepting responsibility, taking initiative, and being intentional to love other people. Like acceptance of responsibility and love fit within those 2 words. And so that's kind of our heart for you guys as students. And one more thing for you guys, we are actually going to be next week, we've got something special for you. We're changing things up a little bit. And so you will have to tune into our weekend service to find out what that is, because there's no spoilers. So excited for you guys to find out what that is, and you can see it this week on our weekend service, which you can find online at nc1112.com.
It's gonna pop up.
And we'll also post it on our Instagram stuff.
Yeah,
So,
same spot.
Yeah.
love you, dudes.
This one's to my Instagram bio.
My Twitter handle.
Literally goes nowhere.